Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one!
Oladipo!
Another one!
Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor.
Galloway finds Rob Finnessy, who fires the three, and he hit it!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Monday, February 6th. Still celebrating my birthday month. I hope everyone had a great weekend, ready to start a great week off. Plenty to get to, of course, over the weekend, as both Indiana's basketball teams took on Purdue. If you didn't know about it, there was a game Saturday. Number one Purdue came into Bloomington to take on the Hoosiers. Ended up pretty well if you're a Hoosier fan. A little surprising probably to those Purdue fans. Close game, great game. Indiana had a great lead throughout. We'll talk about it. Indiana women's game yesterday, another good game for if you're a Hoosier fan, that is. That was one that Indiana pretty much grabbed control of early and did not let go. And plenty more to get to as well. As hit us up early and often on the Andy Moore Honda hotline with the questions, comments. You guys are already on it. Man, John, jump on there already. Kevin, Fred, David, from all over the place. John Boy, how's it going with you? How was your weekend?
My weekend was great. Nothing super interesting, obviously, but I got to watch some of that Indiana-Purdue game, which was obviously a thrill. I don't know if we really want to get into it, but do we want to discuss the court storming at all today? Or that was definitely a topic of conversation after the game that bothered me for whatever reason, but I know
here's the deal. You know what? Much. With me, it's I think it's a different era of student athletes, number one. Yeah. Number two, let's be honest, this is a group of student athletes in Indiana that has not had reason to celebrate. What the hell have they had to celebrate? Making the NCAA tournament? That used to be a given. They have beaten Purdue twice in a row now, which that in and of itself should not be a reason to celebrate. Now, being a number one team, I think it was kind of cool, but I knew it was coming. Yeah. There was just no way. I think IU did not do enough to prevent it. I do not recall an announcement about storming the court. So I'm not going to say that they did not enjoy it or welcome it for the television view that it gives.
Yes, that's a big point to talk about as well. Yep.
Because the optics, it's about the optics and what that, oh, wow, look at this, look at this excitement going on. Boom, Indiana's beat the number one, boom. So I think that there's something there, maybe. There's
really
all kinds of different angles to it.
You're playing the number one team.
Well, I've gotten past
you go ahead.
I'm just going to say I've gotten past I'm like, you know what, they're going to do what they're going to do. It doesn't matter. Tradition's kind of out the window now on a lot of things and on minor things like that. I'm like, screw it. You got to pick your battles. But it's just like names on the back of the jerseys. I couldn't give two, you know what? I don't give a rat's butt if they do or they don't. I'll tell you this, not a school without a names on the back of the jerseys has won a national championship since Indiana last won one.
Yep.
It's a new era. But that's not going to win you a national championship, so let's not be pretending that. But I digress. So I'm kind of over it. I'm like, yeah, whatever. It is what it is.
I think Heath says it best in the comment section. Let the students have their fun. That's really what it's all about. the people who are making noise all game, the people who are really getting the rest of the crowd fired up, the students are responsible for what's going on with everything going on in Assembly Hall and the environment that it creates. And the students have never experienced the tradition and success that longtime fans have obviously, experienced years ago. So that's why I don't think it's that big of a deal. Let the people who have been there through the horribleness of the Archie Miller era get their fun. I mean, I know they got to have it last year, but you have different guys this year as well too. So,
the one thing that you have to bring up is safety for players on either team. To be honest with you,
even Dick Vitale during the TV telecast was asking Bob Wischusen, "Do you think they're going to storm the floor?" Because he was wanting to make sure he was protected.
Carl points out that the Purdue fans stormed the parking lot at the fourth quarter media timeout on Sunday. That's funny. Yeah. That he's referring to the women's game in which Purdue was thoroughly being rocked there. Let's see. Do you think Kansas would storm the court? What about no? But those
I think North Carolina has. He mentioned North Carolina in there. North Carolina
missed the point. Rudy, when what's the difference? The one difference between Indiana and Kansas, North Carolina, and Duke, those three schools have remained relevant over the last 25 years, while Indiana has not. That's the whole point. Their students have seen success. Their students just saw North Carolina in a championship game. Duke students have seen them have success. Kansas just saw their team win the championship. So relevance matters. And you have a generation of students that have not seen relevance. Not 4 years of a generation of students that have not really seen it. So
I think just stop letting it embarrass you, because here's the thing. The only people complaining about the court storming, or well, I don't want to say the only, but the majority of the people complaining about the court storming are people who weren't at the game. So let the people who were there enjoy what was going on. They were a part of the environment. They created everything that happened during that game. And it is what it is. There's no reason to be embarrassed about people having fun getting on the floor. That's just my point of view on that.
Well, but it does not, that's not going to happen. All right. The expectation is that your program gets to a point to where those things happen. Now, it's not every day that a number one team comes into your arena.
It's been 10 years.
So there's that. And it's another thing when the number one team, your rival, comes into your arena as the number one team, which has never happened.
Correct.
So that's also an ingredient you have to put into this. You're playing your rival, whom you had trouble. You hadn't beaten in like 8 or 9 straight tries before they knocked him off last year. It was 9 straight
before last year.
Okay, so you'd lost 9 straight there, but now that streak had ended. But now they're coming in as the number one team for the first time ever. Hell, for one thing, they've never been number one that often. Last year was the first time that ever achieved that status, but they had never come into Bloomington as the number one team, which they did this time. So there's that going on. So I'm not supporting it, but I'm also not. I'm on the fence on this one. I did have a definitive. I didn't really like it. It's kind of act like you've been there, sort of a thing, but they haven't been there.
Yep.
But we're talking about the students, guys. They haven't been there, and you're talking about students. 50% of the students here are not from Indiana. 50% of the students have no idea, really. They've heard that there's history, but they don't know what the history is. So it's no, you can't blame them, because this is like, it's not like an Indiana winning, because these students have not had that success. So I understand it.
And we can put that to bed. I just knew that was going to be a topic of conversation this morning.
Yeah. Oh, well, but it is. But hey, the best part, it doesn't matter. If that's the worst problem for people, then things are great for them, because Indiana not only gets the win, it's an important win in the Big Ten standings. Now, Indiana, that moves them up to there's still a tie for third.
It's a 6-way tie for third place right now.
Yeah. Was it 6?
Unless something changed last night whenever I didn't look. But I thought I saw last night it was a 6-way tie. Maybe I can get those teams who are all involved. The 2 teams ahead, obviously Purdue, number 1 still, and Rutgers, who Indiana plays tomorrow. So Indiana will have a chance to, if they beat Rutgers, they'll be tied for second in the Big Ten standings.
Yeah, let's be honest. No one's going to catch Purdue.
No, unless I mean, they can have a slump. I mean, sometimes games like what happened this past weekend with Purdue, if they don't bounce back immediately, it can cause a bit of a spiral. I'm not saying they're going to like completely derail their season, but Indiana's chance at sneaking up on the Big Ten title is going to be right now. They're going to have to hope that Purdue takes a couple more losses leading up to the end of the season if they want that chance. And obviously their chances as good as anybody else's right at this point in the season. So trying to pull up them standings.
The Indiana women's team is at the top of their standings.
There you go. Did they take care of Purdue as well this weekend?
Yes. 69-46.
There you go. Oh my gosh.
Absolutely. It was but I'm trying to no one's
got the 6-way tie, by the way. You've got Iowa, Maryland, Northwestern, Indiana, and Michigan. No, and Illinois. All at 7-5 in the conference. And 3 of those teams, 3 of those teams are all 16-7. No, 4 of those teams. Maryland 16-7. Northwestern 16-7. Indiana, Illinois, and you can include Rutgers, but they're 8-4 in the conference. But they're 16-7 overall.
Yes, there's 5 teams actually that are 16-7 right now. But yeah, it's
Rutgers though. I was talking about within the third place tie.
Oh, but it's going to be interesting to see who comes out of this mix, because this mix, while it's been that way for a week or so, is going to go through the Big Ten grinder, and it's going to get chopped up, and somebody's going to come out on the upper end, and someone's going to go out on the lower end. And I'll tell you another thing that's very, very important with this is getting a double bye at the Big Ten tournament. Indiana has not. They have. I'd have to do some research to see the last time Indiana had a double bye at the Big Ten tournament. It's been a while. That's probably going back to 2016, I would say, just by a guess. But right now, they put themselves in a position to get a double bye at the tournament. Indiana can have another shot at Purdue after they have to go to Purdue yet. There could be 3 times that they play this season. But I want to say something else too. Zach Edey, I don't know how you're going to give him it's going to hard to beat him out for National Player of the Year, first of all. His team is still they're going to be a top. I still think that Purdue is going to be the overall number 1 seed in the men's basketball tournament. Unless someone like Houston's able to win out, which is possible because they don't have nearly as strong a schedule. But Zach Edey he's just hard to hold down. Indiana did as good a job on him in the first half, probably better than anybody has this season, getting him to foul. He had 2 fouls, which, they don't call fouls on Zach Edey. Indiana had 2 on him in the first half. But he still ended the game with 33 and 18, people. He came alive in the second half, but Indiana did a good enough job defending the rest of their team, and that's exactly what I said going into this, that it wasn't going to be about Trace and Zach, because they were going to get theirs, and they did. Indiana doesn't win this game without Trace Jackson Davis's 25 points, but it was the help from everybody else all around that made the difference in that game, in my opinion, at least. Indiana getting a great effort from, I'm on the wrong page here. Let's see. 16 points from Jalen Hood-Schifino, which, pointed out by Alec Lasley, equaled the effort from the freshman duo of Fletcher Lawyer and Braden Smith. They would combine. Braden Smith only had 4 points in the game, was 1 for 8. I talked about putting pressure on those freshman guards. Well, combined, they were 5 for 20. But Braden Smith, a 1 of 8 performance. And he did have 6 assists. But the turnovers, they forced Purdue into 16 turnovers, 11 in the first half. That was huge. That got Indiana out to that was the difference of the game to me, because Indiana also it was the points off of turnovers that Indiana were able to get. It was a 20-8 for the game, but it was 12. I think they forced 11 first half turnovers. They had 16 points off of those turnovers. That was the difference, people. But it was an unbelievable defensive effort. Arms flying everywhere. It looked like there were 7 guys out there for Indiana.
Jalen Hood-Schifino, you mentioned him. To me, this is the game where he evolved from a freshman to a sophomore. Would you disagree with that? Or do you think he grew up a little bit this game?
Oh, I mean, he was of course, any Purdue game is going to do that to you, but I think he was already on that. But he showed, but that stat I just gave that Alec put out, that, he's 16 points on 8 of 15 shooting, 4 assists.
And then he comes up with the game-winning play, essentially.
Only 1 turnover and 2 personal fouls. That is a great stat line in a big game. And that's what big-time players do. They show up in big-time games. And he did that. Well, and he's a freshman. Well, and people talked about, Indiana should have recruited. They should have recruited Braden Smith. They're going to be sorry. Well, you know what? They had a spot. They had 1 spot. Who would you want? Now, you can look at it from the standpoint that Jalen Hood-Schifino is not going to be here when Braden Smith is at Purdue doing great things, and that will be the truth. So you give up a little now for Purdue's giving up some now for a gain later in that regard. So that's going to have the pressure on Indiana replacing Jalen Hood-Schifino with guards that will be as good as Purdue. But for this one, Indiana wins the battle of guard without question. And they don't win the battle in the middle, but it was basically a tie. Zach Edey had more points, but he didn't have enough to offset what Indiana was doing.
But to be fair, I think that as much as it's great for Trace Jackson Davis, as well as he did in this kind of game, and you mentioned earlier, without Edey, Purdue is nowhere close to as good as they actually are. And that proves to me why he is still on the path to take the not just Big Ten Player of the Year, but National Player of the Year.
Right on. Points in the paint in this battle, 44-40. So Purdue wins the battle, but not by much. I would not have thought Indiana would have been able to get that done as well as they did, but their offense looked a lot more. There's a lot more movement, which opened up some space, and it gave Trace Jackson Davis room to work like I have not seen them give him this year, especially in a game like this against an opponent with the size that Purdue has. But and Miller Kopp did part of that. He had his movement through there was part of that, so he gets credit. He only scored 6 points, only took three shots on the day. Again, probably a game where he could have shot more, but he was active.
Indiana only shot 10 threes for the whole game compared to Purdue's 18.
Well, the game, they were very efficient. Well, with it from their standpoint, 40%. So I wouldn't say very efficient. They were efficient, more efficient than Purdue's 6 of 18 at 33%. but Jalen Hood-Schifino only put up 1 3-pointer. He was more concerned with running the offense. Miller Kopp was 2 of 3. He was extraordinarily efficient in the shots he put up. So he helped out greatly in that regard, in addition to just helping open up some space for Trace Jackson Davis. Like I said, Race Thompson was just kind of battling in 22 minutes, 6 points for him, 4 of 4 at the free throw line, though. Big help there. Indiana, 83% at the free throw line. That's you want to talk about an area where Purdue gave it up. 58% at the free throw line for Purdue. 58%, 10 of 17. They have 7 shots, 7 free points.
This is usually the area where Indiana fans are complaining about the Hoosiers not being able to be sufficient where they were this time around.
So,
what do you think about this, Jimbo? Before we got a couple of minutes to break for Don Fischer, I was looking at the ESPN prediction index for the remainder of Indiana's season. They're only favored currently to lose one of their remaining games. How likely do you think that is? Indiana goes, I don't know, would it be 7-1 or 8-1 for the rest of the year?
I'd have to look at the schedule.
Let me pull that up real quick because I haven't.
I know that has to be the game at Purdue.
It is the game at Purdue. You have home against Rutgers, at Michigan, at Northwestern, home against Illinois, at Michigan State, at Purdue, and then 2 home games against Iowa and Michigan.
At Michigan and at Michigan State are going to be tough.
Very tough. Even though Michigan's having a bit of a down year, and Michigan State's not necessarily having a down year, but they're not living up to their typical expectations. But yeah, whenever I was looking at those last night too, I'm like, I don't see Indiana getting out of both Michigan and Michigan State without losing to at least one of them. I mean, maybe they do. Maybe they go on a roll, but it wouldn't surprise me if they have trouble in either one of those games.
Michigan has been on the rise. They had a bad start to their season, but they have been winning and trying to stay in the upper echelon of the Big Ten Conference standings where they had been, but they've got a lot of work to do with the net rankings. We'll look at those. And Michigan State just always tough at home, not having the year that they want to have either. But we'll see. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Don Fischer will join us next here on as we come to you from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios on this Monday, February 6th. We're back with it. Brought to you by our good friends from Andy Moore Honda. Don't forget to go to andymoorehonda.com. Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer. And Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club. Make sure you go there, sign up, start earning Wow rewards today to great places like BB's Market, your butcher, baker, whatever you need, located right here. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether it's
all right. Andrew, I don't like the Tom Crean slander. I'm just kidding. Y'all say whatever you want.
I didn't see what it said.
He just said Crean and Miller would have somehow lost the game with their coaching. I know Crean wasn't the best coach for Indiana, but I enjoyed his time while he was there. I think I enjoyed how much he bothered like Kentucky fans, honestly.
Who?
That was probably my favorite part about it. The fact that he got under their skin. Tom Crean.
Oh.
Because they just thought he was a goofball, and he was, but...
Well, he got under the skin because they lost to him.
Mm-hmm. Well, they always said how they shouldn't, and I guess they probably shouldn't have been losing to Crean, but it was always funny whenever he did. Excuse me. And I'm sure you know this, but don't forget to mention Don Fischer's 50 years when he gets on. 50 years of IU basketball. Here comes Mr. Fischer. Good morning, Don.
Hi, John. How are you?
We are doing well. Back in about 1 minute.
Okay. That's a fine. If you're going to cuss on the air, it's a fine.
No, daggone it. Right into the king.
Do you guys that do these kinds of shows now, do you have any FCC regulations?
Well,
Yes,
we
but
do because we're on radio. So
usually our affiliates play us in the afternoon, and so I just edit. If there's any expletives, I edit them after the show.
And it's rare that it comes from me, I can tell you that.
Okay, go ahead.
Here we go, guys.
Incentive service, Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by Southern Stone Restaurant. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday, February 6th. Hope you had a great weekend and your weekend and getting your week started off right. If not, we're going to do that right now with the great Don Fischer, the voice of the Hoosiers. Don, how are you, sir?
I'm well, Jim. How are you?
Great. First of all, I was mad earlier and I said, damn, and that's why I said that, because I meant to send a video of that I made from over the weekend of Don being acknowledged for his 50 years of service at IU. So you're lucky I didn't get that done because I know he hates that stuff. Trust me, people. He hates the acknowledgement, but he deserves it. Then so that's the problem that we face. But congratulations. So I won't make it any harder on you. You're lucky I screwed up and forgot to send that over.
Good. Really good.
But congratulations for being, that has to be cool just because of all the games that you're doing all the time and watching all the action on the court, because I know you're locked into what you're doing and seriously, because you got all this stuff going through your head and stats and especially a big game like that, and have to be taken away and taken down to the court to kind of do something totally outside of it and something totally you hate, stand and be acknowledged, but it had to be fun and a little nerve-wracking for you at the same time.
Well, the most important thing, and when they said they're going to do this thing, and I go, well, the only way you're going to do it is if I can take my guys out there with me. All the guys that have worked color for me over the years, including Max Skirvin, who was my first color analyst for the first 24 years I did Indiana football and basketball games. Max was our color analyst for those broadcasts. And I said, if I can bring my guys out there on the floor with me, then it's okay. I will come down and we'll do it and we'll get it out of the way and it'll be done quickly. Because I was not going to make speeches or any of those kinds of things. So literally it was a very nice little ceremony. I got to introduce each of those guys that have been with me through the years as color analysts. Obviously Royce Waltman wasn't there because he passed away several years ago from cancer. And then obviously Pete Capizzi lives in Florida in the wintertime, or at least about 2 or 3 months in the wintertime. And he obviously couldn't make it back for the celebration. But nevertheless, the rest of those guys were all there. It was really fun to have them there. And it was special for me to have a chance to introduce them.
Yeah, especially Joe Smith, who has been with you almost the entire length of the run.
Yeah, 40 years. Joe's been with me 40 of my 50. So yeah, he was obviously there and is an icon in Bloomington, as everyone knows. He's been there almost his entire career, with the exception, I think, of maybe his first year or two. He was in Galesburg, Illinois, when he first got into broadcasting then, and then he came back to Bloomington and has been there ever since, and obviously still does football and basketball games for the local high school. So Obviously, a great broadcaster and a guy that we've used in many, many different roles on our broadcast. Started out as a statistician and moved into engineering at one point, pregame, halftime, postgame show host, and did spotting for me in football on top of that. So, like I said, he's kind of a jack of all trades, master of many.
Well, it was a great event. We're glad that we've got to see it happen. And more importantly, you got to see Indiana not only knock off do something they have never done, not knocking off a number one team, but knocking off a number one Purdue team, because that had never happened. Purdue coming into Bloomington as number one. They did. Indiana beats them for a second straight year. That had to be a big old bunch of a bushel of cherries on top of the icing on that one.
Yeah, there's no question. It was a huge win for the program. Number one, number two, eighth win over a number one ranked team in the history of IU basketball, which is obviously special. And to have it be Purdue in this particular case, which is always special to beat Purdue because these two are arch rivals. And Purdue has dominated Indiana over the years. When you look at the records of how many times they've played, you have 95 Indiana wins, and Purdue has 125 Purdue wins. So
I will say this, Don, you have to look at the majority of those came in the first 30 years of them playing. I think it's since 1940, Indiana has a winning record.
Yeah, I think that's correct. But it's right. It's very close. I mean, there's not much separating these two teams outside of those first 30 years when they started playing way back in the
Indiana fans just don't want to hear that.
I know, but it's true. I mean, and that's factual.
I know it is. It's a fact.
But of course, anytime a Purdue fan wants to bring that information up, they just say, "Well, yeah, how many banners you got in there?" And
yeah. The one that says, I think they have an Elite Eight banner now.
You know what? I love rivalries. I just think that's the most fun that you can have from a broadcasting standpoint is when rivals meet. That's why it just makes me sick that Indiana isn't playing Kentucky every year, because what a great rivalry that is. It's even more of a bitter rivalry, I think, than the Purdue.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Kentucky is one of those schools that just they have there's ways to describe it, and therefore I can't do it because it would get us kicked off the air. But nevertheless, Kentucky is one of those schools that you just love to beat. And Indiana has done it more times than not. Actually, I think that rivalry is very close too, but I think Indiana might have the edge in that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, someone like me, I grew up in Southern Indiana, and I couldn't give a rat's butt about Purdue because it just was not in my lexicon when I was first growing up. But Kentucky was, and it was like that's all I cared about was Indiana beating Kentucky as a youth. But it's luckily, I think that we're going to see that resume sooner rather than later, and you'll be doing a Kentucky-Indiana game again soon. I can't wait for us to be able to that information to get out to announce. But there was plenty enough great stuff to announce from over the weekend. First of all, Don, this was the best performance overall by Indiana I've seen all year. It was the best defensive performance that I saw in the first 5 minutes. It looked like they had 7 guys on the court with arms flying all over the place. And they were just determined defensively in this game.
There's no question that the difference in the ball game was Indiana's defensive play, in my opinion, on their guards. That's where the game was won because Braden Smith is a terrific freshman guard for Purdue. And Fletcher Lawyer is he's a shooting guard that has been tremendous for them as well. Both are freshmen and both play like they're juniors. These guys have been around, they act like they've been around. They are tough as heck as competitors. And Indiana was able to take them out of what they were trying to do in that regard, especially in the first half, and did it for most of the ball game, to be quite honest about it. But they had to expend a ton of energy to get it done. But you're absolutely right. That first 5 minutes was special. And they basically maintained that kind of intensity throughout the first half. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been up by 15 at halftime. It was 50-35 halftime score, Indiana on top. The second half, I think Indiana was a little out of gas. I don't think that the intensity level was quite what it was previously. Purdue made some adjustments. They got the ball down low to Zach Edey almost any time they wanted to, and Zach Edey took advantage of it. He goes for 33 points and 18 rebounds, just a tremendous performance. But Trace Jackson Davis was daggone good at the other end of the floor for Indiana as well. And Indiana was able to hang on at the end, win the ball game. It was a 1-point game with 2 minutes to go. And Indiana made the plays down at the end that finished it off. And Purdue never led a single time in that contest.
Yeah, I was wondering that. I didn't thought about that at one point. I'm like, did they ever lead? But at the half, that defense had forced Purdue into 11 turnovers, which was about a half a turnover more than they had usually averaged for a game. More importantly, Indiana was very efficient in those turnovers because I think they got a lot of runouts with them, and they got 12 points off of those turnovers, which compared to 1 point for Purdue off of that. And another thing, I've never seen a team get out rebounded as badly as Indiana did, but still win a game. And that's something that Matt Painter talked about afterwards. He said, usually when you got a guy that goes for 33 and 18 and you out rebound someone as well as they did by 18, I think, he goes, you're going to win a game. He goes, but they just played too good a defense. And that's what Indiana did. They played defense on everybody. You talked about the guards. They ended up going, those freshman guards ended up going 5 for 20, I think, for 20%, total of 16 points. Jalen Hood-Schifino, 8 of 15 by himself for 16 points, only 1 turnover for him. So there's your story of freshman guards between Indiana and Purdue.
Well, I got to correct one thing I said. Purdue never led. They did lead in this ball game, but only for 35 seconds. So
I was going to say it must have been way earlier.
It was way early in the ball game, and they did lead the contest, but it was in the first minute of the contest. But never that all said, Indiana just played so well at the defensive end, and they actually had a 20-8 points in the paint, or points on turnovers. Indiana had 20 points on turnovers to just 8 for Purdue, and forced Purdue into 16 turnovers, which they haven't done that. I don't know that they've had any more turnovers than that on the season in any individual game. So this is a Purdue team that had lost one time that when Indiana beat them on Saturday. So now they have 2 on the board. They have played great basketball. Indiana found the recipe to win this contest, but they're going to have to find it again when they play them at Purdue here in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I guess, from now. So it's going to be a challenge. But right now, Indiana's back on the hunt in this Big Ten chase, but they're tied for 3rd place with 5 other teams. There are 6 teams tied for 3rd place in this league right now.
Don, do you ever recall in your years of a pack of this big? I mean, there's always, I remember 3 and 4, but man, to see 6 teams there with the identical record, and it's just amazing to me.
Well, it's been, I mean, if you think about the Big Ten here in the last 5 or 6 years, this league is just stuffed with parity. I mean, there's so many teams in this league that can beat you on a given night. Now, has it been quite like this? I'm not quite sure it is, but we have said before over the last 4 or 5 years that the Big Ten from top to bottom is the best league in the country. And I don't think there's any question that we've got the same scenario again this year in that regard. Purdue is obviously up there ahead of everybody else, but they just have been proven. Rutgers beat them at West Lafayette, and Indiana beats them in Bloomington. So they can be beaten. And maybe other coaches now figure out that this is the way you got to go about playing these guys. And we'll see how it all plays out, of course. But right now, the most important thing is that Indiana is in the hunt once again for the Big Ten championship. They're just a couple of games or 3 games back. They've got to come up with a formula to continue to win. And they've got a real challenge this week because they've got Rutgers, a team that they haven't beaten in the last 4 years. Trace Jackson Davis has never beaten Rutgers. He is 0-6 against them. 6 straight wins for the Rutgers ball club over Indiana. 8 of the last 9 games played between these two, Rutgers has won. and you're going to have to play them after an emotional win over Purdue, which drains a lot of energy from players. And I think it's always really hard to come back the next ball game after pulling off a major upset like Indiana did on Saturday and doing the same thing against a team that has your number the next time out. So I think Indiana's got a huge challenge on their hands this week with this Rutgers ball club. And then they play another third place tied team in Michigan on Saturday on the road.
Yeah, the Rutgers game is going to be tough for a number of reasons, Don. First of all, it's a quick turnaround. You go from that Saturday game right to a Tuesday game, and you mentioned it being an emotional game. Fortunately, I think the only thing that will alleviate some of that is Trey Jackson-Davis is well aware, because he mentioned it already in the post-game presser, talking about Rutgers and looking to Rutgers. He's I think that he's reached a businessman type approach right now, and he mentioned having not beaten them, and he's kind of reached a point in this season to where he's tired of having happened what happened to him at Rutgers this year, what happened to him against Arizona and Kansas. And I think he reached a point and said, that's it, I'm tired of this. And it's actually fun to watch him play, and it's been fun to watch him play of late, especially as they try to open up that lane, man. And like I think you mentioned this last week, when he's palming the ball, this new move that he's got of palming the ball, it's like, look out, guys, I'm coming in. And he was doing that against Edie. It didn't matter. You can tell he's playing with so much more confidence. And he mentioned getting punked verbatim. I think he heard me say that before, but they got punked at Rutgers, and he said it, and he goes, that's not going to happen this time, and I don't think it will in Assignment Scott Assembly Hall. And if it does, that means Indiana has won 7 out of their last 8 games.
Oh, you mean Rutgers?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Rutgers has won, I think. Let me check my note here.
Well, but if Indiana beats Rutgers, that will be Indiana's 7th out of 8 games.
Indiana has lost 8 of the last 9 times they played.
To Rutgers, yes. I'm talking about currently on their current streak right now. If they go ahead and beat Rutgers, that will with that loss, the loss to Maryland coming last week, they had won 6 in a row at that point, or 5 in a row, I think.
They had won 5 straight before they lost to Maryland. Yeah.
So, so they're on a good late season surge, and they need this for getting the double bye in the Big Ten tournament, which is of ultimate importance. And so, beating Rutgers, they need to get past them, not lose the home game, NCAA seeding, because beating number 1 Purdue is helping them with that. Duke beat North Carolina, so you're not counting on that. There's just so much that goes into this stuff, Don, that's out of their control, but they can only control what they can, and that's winning games. Right.
At this point, you can't worry about anything other than the next game. And I know that's coach speak and cliche-ish and all that kind of thing. It's just reality. I mean, the fact of the matter is players cannot get caught up in anything down the road. If they do, and that's where their focus is, they're not going to win the next game. It's just that simple. This league is too tough. You can't look ahead past anybody. And Indiana's got 2 games this week. They're going to be very challenging. Rutgers being the first, Michigan on the road being the second. Again, you can't get past these 2 ball games. If you lose these 2 ball games, you're back down there probably in 9th or 10th or 11th place in this league.
It takes no time. I think Michigan's going to be a tough – Michigan did not start the season well, but they have gotten things turned around for themselves. They had moved up. They're 7-5 in the conference right now. They've won 2 in a row at the moment, 9-3 at home. So that's not where you really want to play them. We'll see how that goes. And of course, the game against Rutgers. And then we can't forget the women. How about the sweep this weekend as Indiana sweeps Purdue as the women go up to West Lafayette and get a 69-46 win. I think that will allow Terry Morin to be at Southern Stone tonight, where she hasn't been able to be for a couple of weeks, as you will find Don Fischer and Mike Woodson for Inside Indiana Basketball at 7:05 at Southern Stone Restaurant, correct?
Yes, we will have Coach there. He will be leaving early tonight. He will be there and talk to us for a few minutes at the outset of the show. He's got another commitment that he has to deal with apparently tonight. And therefore, the last half of the show or so will be Race Thompson and Trace Jackson Davis.
Oh, wow. You heard it here first, man. The dynamic duo, Race and Trace, at Southern Stone tonight for Inside India Basketball at 7:05. Don, cannot thank you enough, man.
You bring the rope. We're going to have to cordon things off as security. We're going to have heavy security tonight. And obviously, because you know as well as I do, we're going to have people there that haven't been there for any show this year if those two guys are on hand for the night show.
Yeah, and the weather's been nice enough that we don't have that to scare people off either.
No,
So, it'll be that. Get there early. Don Fischer, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Jim. Appreciate it. See ya.
The great Don Fischer, the voice of the Indiana Hoosiers, joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Southern Stone, a part of the WOW Endeavor Club. Endeavor's WOW Club. Make sure you go there, sign up, start earning WOW rewards today to great places like Southern Stone, located on Patterson and Rogers in Bloomington, and site of Inside Indiana Basketball, where you'll find those guys there tonight. And, man, I guess I'm going to have to get there early. Race and Trace, that we're going to be there. So for those of you listening in the Bloomington area, there you go. Now you know it. All right. We're going to be back with the great Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Golfers, here's the deal.
Jim, how are you, sir?
Dustin, buddy, how are you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing good.
I bet
Hey, Dustin, could you wipe off your camera lens a little bit? Looks like it's a little blurry.
What's that about? Any better?
Maybe a
It's
little
not
bit.
lighting?
I don't know what it is.
Oh, it's not.
It may be nothing you can control. I just didn't know if there was a smudge on there
Yeah.
or anything. There we go. That's
That looks
better.
a little better. Okay.
Excuse me.
Something up in there.
I try to smudge mine. That's the only way of improving. Yeah, I tried to get this damn video to send to you, John, but it wouldn't send.
It's all right. It would have embarrassed him anyway.
Yeah, but I'll try it again on a different format here.
Okay.
Gmail. How about that? God damn it. Nope, not that way either. No other time. What's new with you, my friends?
Just watching the Pacers struggle, man.
Yeah.
Still, just dropped 2 out of 3 since Tyrese came back, so they're still 12 out of 14.
Didn't somebody just demand a trade?
What's up?
Didn't somebody demand a trade? Oh, no, I was thinking of
Kyrie Irving.
Man, how about the Mavericks?
Can't believe it. That's wild. Yeah.
Mark Cuban says, I think I'd like to win one.
Yeah. I mean, shoot. I mean, they moved some good players too. Finney Smith and Dinwiddie Brooklyn made out, if Kyrie was about to just rip that joint apart, Brooklyn got some pieces they can win with. I
can also, though, see Mark Cuban going, now, Kyrie, look, I want you to come here and be a part of this, but let's be straight up. I'm not going to deal with any of your bullshit.
I mean, he could say that. Many have said it before.
That's right. It's been said.
And frankly, I'll protect our source here because it was an off the record conversation. But me and another guy on the beat were talking about with this to somebody who would know, and just pointed out that just from a pure basketball standpoint, forget the Kyrie crazy, and that's its own issue. Two things.
15.
One, you need a superstar to corral Kyrie that has the personality to do it, and Luka does not have the personality to do it. Not that I know him, but you don't see somebody who's.
Stop by Feast Market and Cellar today.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indie Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. And now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you here on this Monday. It is February 6th, brought to you by our good friends from Remax Realty. If you're in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience. It could be the difference between you getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com. Big IU fan is Cheryl. Welcome aboard, the man, the myth, the legend, Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. How's it going, sir?
Doing well, Jim. How about yourself?
Not bad. After you moving over to the Pacers beat, that's not been as fun a season to cover, I guess, as the one you left. Indiana coming off of their biggest win of the season, and Pacers kind of sliding downhill and gaining speed.
Yeah, they've taken a negative turn here lately. Obviously, they lost 10 of 11 with Tyrese Halliburton out, and obviously the hope was that they would get back. They would get him back, and then they would be right back where they left off, and that's not how it's happened so far. They'd won 8 of his last 10, but then he came back. Basically, they had played really good for 3 quarters on Thursday night against the Lakers, and then faded. Just fell apart in the fourth. Absolutely disastrous in the fourth. Got a nice win on Friday night against Sacramento, but then just got thumped yesterday against Cleveland. And Cleveland was a team that they'd played well against. They beat once. They had a big lead the other time, but they just never really pieced it together. And just Cleveland did a better job of defending them, did a better job of playing that game the way that they wanted to. Pacers were, I think, 8 of 32 from 3. Didn't shoot it well, didn't move the ball particularly well, didn't defend well enough. And so it's an issue. And they're now in a position where they are currently out of, I think they're a game out of the 10th spot, which is obviously the last playing game. Actually, they're half game behind the Washington Wizards at 25 and 30. And they're tied with Toronto. And both of those are half game out. So that obviously makes things a little more complicated because you've got several teams looking at that spot. Toronto might trade some of its guys, and they might sort of remove themselves from contention. So that's possible. But if they don't, if they keep that team around and they're still sort of hoping to get better, I mean, they have to fight with them. They have to fight with Washington. Orlando suddenly is waking up, and they've got a lot of talent. So they're going to have to hold on for dear life if they want any kind of playoff position. And I think they do. I mean, I think they'd be happy to be in a play-in game just to get some kind of postseason experience for this team. And yeah, it is not trending in a positive direction.
Can they improve their stock in the draft or is it, or they?
I mean, yes, they can move up. I don't see a scenario. Obviously, you get one ping pong ball, you got a shot, and we've seen it before where teams that had one ping pong ball managed to get it picked. And now we could get into conspiracy theories on that, and as far as how that happens. But they could improve their stock. And I think, Kevin Pritchard told us after Miles Turner's contract extension signing, they really like the depth in the draft. They think there are good players that they would like to have that are more towards the point of where they might be picking, and they could obviously it could go across the board. I mean, you're looking at if you miss the playoffs entirely, 1, 2, 3, there's only 10 teams that miss it entirely. There's 5 in each league, obviously because they take the other 10, and I think you still get lottery ping pong balls if you don't get in the playoff round itself. I'm pretty sure that's how that works. I got to double check that to make sure that's the case. But I mean, even if they're low lottery, even if they're 12th, 13th, 14th, I think they feel good about what's available and what can help them. But even if they miss that, if they're in a play-in round or whatever, if they're an 8 seed or whatever and get beat in the first round, I think they still feel pretty good about what they can get. The thing is, they have 3 picks. And the other two are not going to be very high. They have Cleveland's pick and they have Boston's pick. And Cleveland is definitely going to be a playoff team. Cleveland's looking at a 5 seed, maybe could move up to the 4 in the East. And the Celtics might win the East. They might win the whole thing, and they might be the last pick in the first round. So, those are only so valuable. They're probably going to look to move at least one of those. I would say either now or before the draft. I don't see them taking all of those players. As Kevin Pritchard said, basically you don't want to overload yourself with too many young guys at once, because they end up, he used the phrase cannibalizing each other. And, obviously that sounds gruesome. So it's not like that. They don't like fight and bite each other's ears off or something. But what they do is they take each other's playing time. And when you're trying to develop multiple guys at once that are kind of projecty, it can get kind of tricky to get each of them what they need. And they're having an issue already of getting playing time for 2 young centers that they got in Jalen Smith, used to play at Maryland, and Isaiah Jackson from Kentucky. Those 2 guys are having a hard time getting minutes right now. And they just brought Daniel Tice back from knee surgery, and they're trying to get him acclimated and activated and all that, and maybe even trying to trade him. But it's making it even harder for them to get playing time for Smith and Jackson. So it's an issue. But they can improve their stock. I mean, I think they need another great player on this team. They could use another draft pick who pans out as well as Benedict Mathurin has. I think that'd be really helpful for them wherever they get that player, whatever position that might be, with the exception of point guard and center. I mean, anything at the wing, I think they've got a lot of wings, but they could, they'd gladly take another one, I think. And they could use a power forward they can really trust. They're playing really a 6'5" 3-man and Aaron Nesmith, who I think that they love, but is not even in today's NBA really a prototypical power forward. And so I think that they still need some pieces, and they can obviously move themselves up if they win fewer games.
2 incidents of news. We'll get to the Kyrie Irving trade, which was big to the Mavs, but Ja Morant's entourage is being investigated by the NBA for an incident in which they approached and engaged members of the Pacers traveling party, I understand, in the bus area. And then there was an alleged red laser
thing. Yeah. I mean, so I don't know. So first off, obviously the Athletic broke this. So, Bob Kravitz on that crew with Sam Amick did it. So, obviously we were scrambling to confirm it yesterday. And so, the NBA confirmed to us that there was an investigation, that there was a confrontation, but they could not corroborate whether or not, basically a weapon was menaced. So, I mean, it sounds like it basically, like as I read the reporting, it basically says that there was a security guard who said that's 100% a gun, but obviously the NBA was not able to confirm the gun, and so basically the laser pointer thing, when you're talking about not being on the floor, being outside, I think it becomes something that's sort of tough to. Just tough to do only so much with, but apparently the members of Ja Morant's crew that were at the game, some of them were just heckling Pacers players during the game. Some of those guys have been banned, at least one. I don't know if there's multiple, but obviously I don't think they could not go far as to know for a fact that there was a gun in the car.
You should be banned from having any kind of entourage at that point. It should be it. So you cannot have. People. That's the kind of people you're bringing.
It's hard to govern that, though. Like, what is that like? Because like entourage is not a position. It's a vague.
Well, I know, but
we say about your boys. Like, I mean, there's anything from. I mean, sometimes some of those guys are employed. So on a nationwide basis. Obviously, LeBron James has an entourage that involves Maverick Carter, and Maverick Carter gets a whole lot of deals done for him. It is an employed position, and that there is a lot of real work that he does. And there's other people where it's just, this is your buddy who hangs around and, like pushes people away when they're trying to get to you, stuff like that. Maybe you pay him, maybe you don't. Allowed to have an entourage is a hard thing to say because it's very, it can be very vague that way. And it's not like there's some kind of official entourage position. But they've obviously gotten rid of, they've said he can't come to games. I mean, obviously they can't say, Ja, you're not allowed to be around this guy. They might tell him, hey, if this guy's doing this, it's probably best for you not to be around him. So, obviously it's tough to say just what the NBA can do. When the NBA cannot confirm, if they could have confirmed the gun, then obviously they can take a lot of other steps in terms of how they can punish this and take it all the way up to Ja and suspend him or whatnot. But obviously they can't confirm that. And I think it's vague to me as to when Ja was with them and when not, because we asked, Scotty Agnes asked Miles Turner about it, and I asked Rick Carlisle about it. And Turner said that neither he nor Tyrese Halliburton were in the area at the time. Carlisle said he was still in the locker room. And, I think that, the phrasing for who was there it said travel party. I mean, that could be a whole lot of people. That could be trainers. That could be, kind of in-house team media. That could be.
Well, it sounded like an area that was somewhat restricted. So that my question is, how did these people get
who's
access?
Getting back there? I mean, like if it's people that, are giving Ja a ride to games and stuff, I mean, obviously they would be there. So, I mean, and I don't know what Memphis's security situation is, where the loading dock is, in terms of, can you be there? Cause I mean, like, obviously these things are in different places in different stadiums, and there's different levels of security around them, at the time in terms of whether, regular people can drive back there or not, and when it becomes an issue. So I wasn't at that game. So we didn't make that trip. It was a one-off. So, I don't know the specifics of that to speak to it with any level of clarity as to how somebody was able to get back there, or where they came from, or like what exactly that looked like. I couldn't tell you the layout as far as what that looked like. So what I will say is I don't know who they were menacing, and like one, I guess, just bit of like, and I guess this serves as I don't know, some level, it's not perspective, but the Pacers are one of the fastest changing teams in the league in terms of getting out of a locker room. Like we frequently, like are rushing to grab everybody for the Pacers and they're gone. And then have plenty of time to go talk to whoever their opponent is. And that's true at home or on the road. Like we'll talk to all the Pacers, like, when they played the Bucks, we talked to all the Pacers guys. We're out of there. And about half hour, 45 minutes later, we talked to Giannis. Lakers, same deal. They brought, LeBron James and Anthony Davis out to a press conference long after, all the Pacers were gone. And that's their home place. When they're on the road, I mean, it is quick. They get out of Dodge fast. And so the fact that they were still,
if you remember, that's kind of like IU basketball. I mean, there was not a lot of afterwards, man. When they'd come out, we'd talk to them, and boy, they got to go. Because
college is different. College, they make them run, make them move. The NBA does not require that. You don't have to move that fast, but the Pacers do. I don't know why. I mean, there's always like a bus thing on the on whiteboards that they put how fast they got to go, but the Pacers are out. I mean, like when Oladipo was here for the Miami game, I mean, we waited for him for like an hour. Again, he's on the road. So it's different. It is, a college that's got to be, regimented, and they got a charter and they got to get it, whatever. The NBA, generally takes their sweet old time. The Pacers do not. The Pacers move, and the guys move, and they don't have to. I mean, they could play around and sit in the locker room as much as they want. They get in, they get out of there, they go change, they go hang out, but they do not spend a lot of time there. Others do. So what I say that to mean is this must have happened, pretty soon after the game. So that as far as timeline is concerned, that makes it interesting for me. And, it does not sound like Carlisle wasn't out there yet. Players weren't out there yet. I don't know who they were messing with, but it just seems odd to do it in the first place. Like, who were these guys you were messing with? Who were you chirping at? And why? Like, if it's not players, like what even was this about? So I don't know. There's a lot we don't know at this point. Obviously the sources, were the people who said that they were menaced there. Did not press charges for fear of reprisals, didn't name themselves for fear of reprisals. So, somebody obviously wanted this out, but nobody wanted to put their name on it because nobody wants to mess with those people, which again, obviously is more of a concern in and of itself.
Let's see. And then one other thing, Mark Cuban and the Mavs making news, make the big Kyrie Irving trade. Real quickly before we go to break, come back, talk some IU ball, but that is not surprising for something Mark Cuban to do, and that makes them a player, man. You got Luka Doncic.
Yeah. Oh, they were already a player. I mean, Luka's one of the best
Right.
players in the world. And when you've got one of the best players in the world, you got a shot. So it obviously is a explosive and potentially combustible situation, as are all things with Kyrie Irving. So you obviously have just the personality thing. I cannot imagine a scenario where like Luka keeps Kyrie in line. Kyrie's going to do what Kyrie wants to do, and Luka's not going to stop him. And as far as what he says, what he does, whatever, I'm sure he's going to be do what he wants. The tough part is just from a pure basketball perspective, and obviously those guys are two creators that need the ball in their hand. Like Kyrie's not going to run around, sit in the corner and wait for the ball, and so both of these guys need to create, they need to pass, they need to move things. I am fascinated by how that's going to go. Just from a pure basketball standpoint. I mean, like obviously you can have two ball handlers on the floor at the same time, but like when your scorers too, that becomes kind of difficult. So very interested to see how that looks just from a basketball perspective of how you put those two guys on the floor and get them both the ball the way that they want it.
We got to take a break. Rudy the Boxer is letting us know that an earthquake was just reported in Turkey and Syria. So we thinking about that and those people over there affected by that. But we're going to break. Brought to you by Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. For those of you looking for a home in the Southern Indiana, Louisville area, whether it's Floyd, Clark, Harrison, Scott, Washington counties, they have served those communities for nearly 3 decades. No one can get you in the home faster, quicker, or less expensive than Barbara Pop Real Estate Services. Reach out to Barbara at barbarapop.com or our friend Matt Lincoln, Matt at barbarapop.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat and Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Andy Moore Honda. I see that the Pacers, where did it go? Where did I? Daggone it. Schedule. Where did it? Daggone it. Pacers, where'd their schedule go? The wrong one. Come on. Games. Well, they got a big 4-game homestand coming up. No, that's already happened. Never mind. Damn it. That was yesterday. Schedule. Wrong one. All right. Oh, yeah. Late February, though. Not till late February. All right. So they play the Magic, Oh. That's the game I'm coming up for. There you go. They play the Mavs.
They got 2 of them left.
2 games with the Mavericks?
They got one at home, one on the road because they play everybody in the West. 1 at home, 1 on the road.
February. I'm going to try to see about coming up on February 28th.
There you go. February 28th is at Dallas. They're home against Dallas on March 27th. February 28th is at Dallas. I'll be at Dallas.
All right. I don't want to wait.
February 23rd at Boston is a nice one. I don't know if
March 27 Mavs. I'll set up maybe that one, but I want to see one before then. My God, it's something in February. Let's see. So they play the Suns on the 10th. Jazz, the Bulls, the Celtics, like you said, on the 23rd. At 7. What does that mean? A Friday or Saturday game?
What's that now?
7 o'clock games usually mean Friday or Saturday games, or does that even make a difference?
7 o'clocks are almost all the time. They only do the occasional early Saturday or Sunday game. I mean, it happens sometimes. They were 5 o'clock on. It was 5 o'clock Sunday. So, but yeah, I mean, if Monday, Tuesdays are always 7 o'clocks too.
All right, 30 seconds. Excuse me, guys. All right.
Is a fresh home-cooked nutritious meal prep that we cook up. The Fresh Fork takes care of all the planning, shopping, and prepping and can even deliver them to your doorstep once a week. That's right, it's the fastest, simplest, and easiest way to avoid decision fatigue. You pick your plan and pick up at BB's Market with no extra charge. So leave the heavy lifting to us and enjoy healthy eating with stocked meals in your fridge. Order online today at thefreshfork.com. Fresh Fork is a proud partner of WOW Network. This segment is brought to you by Feast Market and Cellar. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Monday. It's February 6th. The great Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star with us. Speaking of Feast Market and Cellar, I've got a box just with your wife's name on it, I should say. Almost. See how quick that was, buddy? Pick that up and turn that.
You did.
That's quick.
Well done.
Quick thinking. Absolutely. But yes, so big thanks to Feast Market and Cellar for that, of course. Indiana Hoosiers, man. I know you're not on the beat anymore, but as much as you're able to watch, but you knowing that this past Saturday was a huge game in so many different ways.
I watched. I camped out for that one.
Last year they're able to stop the streak, which was great. But this year Purdue comes right back, and for the first time ever, they come into Simon Scott Assembly Hall as the number one ranked team, almost the unbeatable team, although they had been beaten once. But you got Zach Edey, whom in the second half we saw what Zach Edey is capable of and why he's just so difficult to stop. It was what they did in the first half, and Indiana put a great defensive effort on and disrupted Purdue's guards, forced them into turnovers, forced Zach Edey into turnovers as well, but just played the best defensive effort that they played all season, and it ended up working out well. They were able to hold on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and that's obviously a place where Assembly Hall really helps you. When they're that jacked up and they're able to really, like IU, derives energy for it. They're running around, produce a little bit on its heels. And you saw stuff like, Edey just dropped some passes. I mean, there were a handful of those. So that was definitely an issue. Just did a phenomenal job of creating turnovers, getting rolling in transition, and got a big enough lead they were able to hang on to it. And obviously make some big plays down the stretch when Purdue obviously came storming back, but they did a terrific job of building a lead, of taking advantage of all of that, energy, all the enthusiasm, just basically everything. And turning that into a win, but massive victory for them. Obviously one that is going to ring, basically is going to echo, in March. This is one that they're going to be able to. This is going to be huge on the resume. It's going to be a big deal for them. But really strong performance. All the way around. I mean, Jalen Hood-Schifino was terrific. I think, the Trace Jackson-Davis Edey, matchup was everything I think it was built up to be. I mean, I think Edey still comes out of it as the favorite for all the awards because he's just too large to stop. And I don't think Trace Jackson-Davis did anything wrong in terms of defending him or even that IU did, but he's just large. There's just only so much you can do with that guy. But I think Trace really, I think, did a good job of I mean, he was tremendous as well.
Just to give you an idea, I thought that Indiana played a tremendous first half defensively, and they did well offensively. But even with that, Zach Edey at the half had 15 points on 6 of 8 shooting, was 3 of 4 at the free throw line, had 8 rebounds.
Yeah,
and in only 12 minutes of play. out of 20.
Yeah.
That's beyond efficient. I mean,
Right.
so it was nothing that Zach's going to get his.
Yeah.
That's why you had to stop. But on the other hand, Braden Smith was 0 of 3 for 2 points. Fletcher Lawyer was 2 of 6. He did have 8 points in 18 minutes, but it was 2 of 6. They were 2 of 7 behind the 3-point line. They were 9 of 15 at the free throw. This is at halftime. They were 9 of 15 at the free throw line, and they had 11 turnovers.
Yeah.
That was except for the free throws, that's Indiana putting the pressure on. And they did a great job.
Mm-hmm. No, they absolutely did. I mean, I think like the one thing that I feel weird about looking at this game and saying like, this is they beat the number 1 team in the country, and they did. Like, Edie takes Purdue so far. Like, I think there are a lot of other good players in that team. I think Braden Smith and Fletcher Lawyer are good players. But like, they're not unbeatable guys. I mean, like there was last year's team had more talent top to bottom. Obviously they had Edie. Edie wasn't this yet, but they were playing Travion Williams along with him. They actually had too much, frankly. They had like too many offensive options. They weren't good enough defensively. The role players who can defend better didn't get to play enough. And so there was a way in which this team was less complete, almost by having too many people that it needed to feed, between Sasha and Eric Hunter and Ivy and Newman and, Gillis and everybody, where this team sort of has a better sense of what it's doing. But on the flip side, like, there just wasn't that big of outside of Edie just being a guy that you can't stop. There wasn't this big talent disparity this time, they're not raw talent wise, Indiana has a better point guard. I think Braden Smith's a nice player. He's playing tremendous. I don't want to take anything away from what he's done, but like Jalen Hood-Schifino could be an NBA player next year. Fletcher Lawyer is a better shooter, is a more consistent shooter than anybody Indiana's got. But he's not like a light years better player. And Race Thompson's not, if he's worse than Mason Gillis, it's not by much. Almost every other position, Indiana was even or better at every other spot, other than center, where they have their All-American. It just happens to be that Edie is a larger human, and like, he's not necessarily a better player. He's not necessarily more skilled. He's just bigger. So like, it seems weird to think of this game as like harder for Indiana to win than last year, because last year the talent disparity was sizable. It was big. Like, Indiana did not have any, like Trey Galloway did an astounding job on Jaden Ivey. And, Ivey's going to be a really good NBA player, like top 5 pick. He's going to be terrific. So, it really says a lot about like that game was, I think, more of a surprise, but these guys did a really good job of taking advantage of the fact that they were not outclassed at most places, and did a good job of, again, using the energy that comes from Assembly Hall on a day like that to really get after people, turn those into turnovers, turn that into transition buckets, take as much advantage of it as they can. And then when they had to grind it out in the half court, they really did.
Well, here's some numbers that I just cooked up. Second half alone. Trey Kaufman-Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, and Caleb First for Purdue, a total of 7 second half points. Yeah, between all 4 of those guys. Jalen Hood-Schifino, 12 second half points by himself on 6 of 12 shooting. That's for everybody who was saying, it would be nice to have the Indiana kids and all that stuff. And, there's been that debate of, well, Purdue's got all these Indiana kids and they're just as good and yada, yada. The thing that you have to wonder now, though, where's the balance? Because while obviously the talent is, I hate to say it, but the talent is better. Jalen Hood-Schifino he's a 5-star. He's everybody thinks he's a better player. The numbers just showed. He was a big player on the big game day. He did it when he was supposed to do it, but he's going to be gone, and these other guys are still going to be there for Purdue. And which is better? You pick your poison. You have to, as long as you could replace Jalen Hood-Schifino with that Jalen Hood-Schifino, that's fine. But if not, you're going to be in a hole next season.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and obviously that's been an issue back and forth the whole time. And Indiana's obviously had some scenarios where they've gotten the great player, the All-American that everybody wanted, and he was gone before it made an impact. Romeo Langford is an in-state player for which you had that issue. Trace Jackson-Davis, though, was a McDonald's All-American, Indiana Mr. Basketball, who's still there. You don't always know, what that's going to be. And you can only do so much when it comes to the recruiting process of saying, okay, like, how do I calculate this out? You got to decide just what you want for you. And Matt Painter has done a great job over the years of deciding what he needs, of what's best for him, of what fits what he wants to do. And you can't argue with the results. I mean, again, obviously Indiana just won the game, but Purdue's number one in the country with, again, I don't think an obnoxious amount of talent. And they've managed to, turn this situation. I mean, it's a rough loss for them, but shoot, they could win the whole thing, and they put together a team that could win the whole thing last year. And they had, but they had a guy who was in state and Jaden Ivey, who, obviously he went to La Lumire's last year and became a big time recruit, but was somebody in the hundreds who ends up being a top 5 pick. So, I mean, you never know how this is going to develop. And yeah, I mean, you want to get guys in state, you want to get guys who play in a system. And, Indiana has some of those guys too. I mean, obviously Trey Galloway fits that mold. Obviously Anthony Leo kind of fits that mold. You go after what you want, you go after what you need. You got to get some skill in there that fits. Purdue obviously really makes a point to make sure they have shooters. That is, a very key number one thing for the team that they build. Painter's thing is he's like, I try to get the best shooter in the Midwest, basically wherever, if he's from Ohio, if he's from Illinois, if he's from, St. Louis, whatever. I want the best shooter that I can get. And if he can defend, great. If he can't, I'll make him defend. If he's a guy that's generally just, that's not a lockdown guy when I get him, I'll make him functional by the time, he's a sophomore or whatever. And that's what he did with Ryan Klein. And that's what he did with Sasha Stefanovic. You got to try to recruit the state. Obviously, this is still the number one reason to coach at Indiana, I think, is because that's your natural resource. That is your advantage. That's what sticks around, is that per capita, you have one of the best states at producing basketball talent. It's not a big state. It's not like, from a population standpoint, it's not like Washington, D.C. It's not like, California or New York or any of these other places that got a ton of guys, or even what Georgia's becoming. But you have, a lot of well-schooled players. So you got to take advantage of that. Like, you can't let that atrophy. You obviously got to go get them. But that doesn't mean, when you have an option in a Jalen Hood-Schifino, you take him. You have an option in a Gabe Cupps, you take him. And he's an Ohio kid, but he fits everything Indiana wants its players to be. If you've been around Gabe, or you've seen Gabe, or the Cupps family, they're going to love him. They're going to absolutely love him. Sometimes you go outside the state to get guys who, again, fit your mold. Ethan Morton is a Yinzer. He's one of my people. And Ethan Morton, I think, fits, what basketball fans in the state of Indiana want in their players. He's scrappy. He defends. He passes. He does little things. You can, you don't always, you can find other guys like that outside this state. They do exist in other places, I promise. But you got to go get what's there, you got to be in on every great in-state player, and you've got to, I think, give some benefit of the doubt to guys that aren't as highly recruited from the state, on the basis of they probably know the game pretty well. Give some level of credit for the coaching and just the culture that builds these kids. There's value. And so, obviously Indiana can never forget that. But, just by the basis of brand name, Indiana can go get a Jalen Hood-Schifino from Montverde Academy, and Purdue has a hard time doing that. Matt Painter, isn't super interested in doing it. he's done a great job building what he has, but I think Mike Woodson does think that there is capacity to go get some superstars, and it's not a bad idea. Like that. Like again, like you're in a position where you went and got Xavier Johnson. He was productive for you, as a transfer, but you lose him, and you need a guy that had to be ready to go right away and had to be ready to go be a leading scorer. And Jalen Hood-Schifino was ready. And if I think Braden Smith wouldn't have been a bad guy to have, but I don't know that you could have relied on him for, getting you 15 to 20 every once in a while in the same way. I think they needed different things. Braden Smith is totally fine for what Purdue wants, for what Purdue needs with this team. He fits in with this group, and really the most important thing they can do is keep getting the ball to Zach Edey. Getting the ball to Trey Jackson-Davis works, but it's not the same as throwing it to a 7'4" guy. You're going to need to have somebody else get you some buckets, and Hood-Schifino's got to be that guy. So they're obviously balancing. You're selling something different in both places. There's going to be a different approach to start with. Bottom line, again, yes, they both should go after the state, but the fact that they both have different approaches doesn't mean one of them is wrong. I think both of them work for each program.
Yeah, Indiana in on a couple of guys right now that, of course, they're a couple of years out. Jalen Harrelson, Trent Sisley, guys like that. But one that was at the game Saturday that they could definitely use next year, Flory Badunga. I think that was probably his third game he has attended. From that currently going to Kokomo High School. Man, he's a game changer in high school. He's a game changer. I think he's a higher recruit than say Xavier Booker from Cathedral, who's going to Michigan State, and he's a good player, no doubt. But Dunga, man, you watch him and he's a game changer. He's active. He gets at it already. He's got a high motor.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen Badunga in a while. And I think obviously he and Booker got after it and some stuff in the summer. I don't know if they played this year or not, if they're anywhere on the schedule, but that's a fun thing. I thought Booker got a lot better in a year, for sure. But but it does seem like Badunga's a game changer and everybody wants him. And so obviously going to be interesting to see just how he plays out. Again, I haven't watched enough to see kind of his specifics. Basically, I have to hedge my bets because I was all on board the Hunter Perea train. You can look back. There are YouTube videos.
How can you not be? He looks he was like a freak.
I thought, he had just crazy wingspan, crazy leaping ability, forceful, just, tough, and showed up in AAU games. And, but I remember seeing him in a high school game and being like, wait a minute, Bloomington South just put their 6'1" power forward who's a pitcher. I think he ended up playing D1 ball at Xavier baseball, and he just got under him, and Perea barely did anything. I was like, wait a minute, this might be a concern. But before that, I was like, man, Hunter Perea is a pro. Forget, Hunter Perea might be a more sure thing pro than Cody Zeller, because Cody Zeller looks skinny and Perea's got muscles and jumps and stuff. And I was wrong.
He was the Ryan Leaf. He was the Ryan Leaf of college basketball.
That's harsh. That's rough. He did, there was some stuff that did not go the way that it was supposed to go, but I was all in on the Hunter Perea train. So anybody that comes over to the state of Indiana with any sniff of anything from A-Hope, and those are good people. They've treated me well through the years, but I'm always a little hesitant to jump on train in terms of them being superstar game changers after that. But he does look good. He does look really good, and obviously a lot of people want him, and he's doing a heck of a job for Kokomo, and it obviously helps when Indiana gets a guy like that in for that game. Makes a difference. Certainly, and if he doesn't have to go very far, that helps. So I'm sure that puts him in pretty good shape, but I know a whole bunch of other teams want him too.
And Trace Jackson-Davis, his performance, he's gotten so much better over this season. He's kind of become more of a player that's starting. He's starting further away from the basket. He's got this new move. He's starting where he gets and he palms the ball, which, he gives you that I forget who, may have been Don Fischer who said it, but it kind of reminds you of this Dr. J kind of a thing. He said, although he's not athletic like Dr. J, but when you have that, and I agree, people like Zach Edey, they're not quick enough. As a matter of fact, I saw Malik Renew put a move on Zach Edey, and I was like, oh my. It was like really stood out. He just went to his left back and just came back, and he made Zach Edey look like a fool. And I'm like, oh my, that's coming from a freshman. So if Zach stays in school another year, his ceiling is he's close to it, I think. I mean, I don't know what more is he going to do unless he develops a 3-point shot all of a sudden. But Malik Renew, I was like, oh wow, man, to be able to play against that guy who he's giving up 6 inches, and so I think that his speed, his foot speed may hurt him, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think on all of that deal, I mean, the NBA is a different beast, man. I mean, it really is. I think, obviously, again, we've talked about it before. I mean, there are guys that are still in college basketball that 10 years ago, would have been top 10 picks already, and been in the league and whatnot. And because the game is operating so faster and so much quicker, a lot of these guys have to stick around, and then you're having a hard time. They're having a hard time getting in the league. Absolutely having a hard time getting in the league. So it's tough, and I don't know that Zach Edey has a place in the league. I mean, you think just because he's that large, there's got to be something. But man, the game moves so fast.
Has Trace Jackson Davis increased his possibility for finding a spot in the league?
I mean, I think so, but only so much. I mean, I think the has Trace developed question is fascinating because I mean he's become a much better college basketball player, and there are guys that are successful in the NBA that cannot do what Trace does. Like there are guys in the NBA that you couldn't build a college team around and say you're going to go win tournament games or you're going to go compete for a Big Ten title or this can be your centerpiece. But they are just guys who are really long and athletic and can go do what you need for their position. Isaiah Jackson's a guy I think of a lot because I mean he does not get to play a lot right now, but I mean he's super athletic, gets up. I mean he's valuable and he's going to always be valuable to an NBA team because he can leap, he can rim protect, he can shoot a touch, he can dunk, but I mean he gets up and down the floor. I don't see anything that tells me I'd build a college team around him. But I can always think of a way that he can help me on an NBA team, and so it ends up being two different deals. It's like you're judging them on two different spaces, and like Trace has had to come up with so many counters and so many different ways of dealing with this double team and this and just it's all the different ways that teams had to go after him. Isaiah Jackson never really had to do that, but at the next level, that's not even an issue. Nobody's double teaming him, that's he's. 4th or 5th guy on the floor as far as the scouting report is concerned, but he can get it, ball comes off the floor and at the rim and he can go up for a tip dunk or, again, he can come up the floor and just erase your shot. And he doesn't have to do a lot of things to be productive where Trace has to do so many things to be that good. And it helps. You say, okay, well, that could help you long-term. But it's but if you can't shoot it, it's tough. And if your athleticism isn't crazy, and Trace's is really good, but it's not nuts. It becomes a little bit, it's not that it's hard to see, it becomes you and a whole bunch of other guys could also do it. And so it's a question of what system are you in, what breaks do you get, what's the other roster situation? You never know. I mean, again, Aaron Nesmith is a guy that's starting for the Pacers right now, barely played for the Celtics. So when you're past that, that higher level of 30 top guys in the league that could play wherever, and just are the best players in the world. Everybody else is kind of in that position where they need a break. And some guys get them and some guys don't. And you don't know who's going to make it and who's not. There are guys who are plenty good enough to be in the NBA that are overseas. And there's a ton of them in the G League. And so, I think Trace has helped himself by just continuing to be productive and be good. But I don't know how high he gets picked. And, he is a little older and I'm sure guys that are freshmen that are more of, mounds of clay might go higher. So it's tough. I mean, I think he'll be in the NBA. I think he'll probably spend a lot of time in the G League next year. I don't think that's a bad thing. So I mean, they're going to give him a shot, and he's going to get to start playing over here. That I think is fair to say for certain. Someone's going to draft him. Someone's going to have him in camp. Is he going to play 60 NBA games next year? I don't know if I can say that.
We'll certainly find out. Cannot thank you enough, Dustin Dopirak from the Indy Star. What's up next for you? I know the Pacers travel to Miami.
I don't. Yeah, they'll practice today.
Too bad.
It's deadline week, so we'll find out. I mean, I don't know that they're looking to be super aggressive, but they could be. You never know. There are a couple guys that they could use that are on the market. I think they could really, again, use a bigger power forward. We'll see if they make a move. We'll see what they're willing to put on the table.
Cannot thank you enough, brother. Have a great one. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Jim.
Dustin Dopirak here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by Metalworks Brewing Company, part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wow Club and served at all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. But you can go right to the brewer itself, right off of the square in Bloomington on 6th Street, Metalworks Brewing Company there. And they love for their love of metalwork and craft beer combined of being a part of the community. Back with more Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
All right, we've got your Woody question, your Trace question. Someone asked Jalen Hood-Schifino about his game-winning play. I've got that, and I've got the Matt Painter clip that you were referencing earlier about the turnovers and the rebounds and stuff like that. So
Awesome.
We are good to go with that stuff. And then we got one more break to hit as well about halfway through this segment if you want. Not if you want, but you'll eventually have to hit, but you know what I mean.
You know what? We could come back in with is there one of the clips long?
What do you mean? I mean, they're all under a minute.
Okay, I was going to say, like sometimes I like open a segment with the clip.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Which one would you want to do it with?
Maybe Matt Painter.
Just have the music underneath of him talking kind of thing?
Well, you wait till you're really fading the music out.
Okay, yeah, I know what you're saying. We can do that if you want. And plus, the Matt Painter clip is a little quieter than the rest just because of the way it was recorded, I guess. I don't know. But we can do that. You want me to just kind of go into it cold kind of thing?
Sure.
All right, we'll try that out.
How can I get this clip to you? It's like 2:40. I posted it on Twitter. I think.
I don't know. We don't have too much time anyway. We can look at it tomorrow.
Well, it's not necessarily for today. I'm just saying you can pull it off Twitter.
Is it on YouTube? I mean, I'll just download from YouTube if you put it on YouTube or even Twitter.
Yes. It's on both.
Yeah, I'll just look for that if you want to reference it tomorrow.
So you got some great pictures from yesterday, I'll tell you.
You know what's funny? I mean, I thought about this earlier. I didn't mention it, though. This is be the second time this season that Indiana's playing Rutgers right after an emotional win over like a top team. $20, by the way. And I guess you don't need to be here in the next 20 seconds because we're coming in with the segment cold. So with Matt Painter. So here we go.
And will be offered in all Endeavor Hospitality restaurants. Come taste with Dr. Hobbs' Brewing, Metalworks Brewing Company. Bring your passion and your thirst.
This segment is brought to you by Courtroom Sports Grill in Bedford. Now back to the golf club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
We had 3, costly turnovers there at the end where we needed to get, a crack at it. But we really talked about how they pressured and got into you. Last year here, we had 10 turnovers in the first half here last year. Then we came back and actually took the lead in the game, and then they made that shot at the end. But we just said, like, we can't repeat that. Let somebody beat you a different way. Like, keep giving yourselves a chance and take care of the basketball. And so when you have 11 turnovers in the first half, and the game before you had 7 for the whole game, it just hurts you. But our guys were resilient. They battled back, but not good enough. Not making our free throws, turning the basketball over. You out-rebound somebody by 16, and you got somebody who gets 33 and 18, should win the game. That should have been ours. But, give them credit. They made more plays than we did down the stretch.
That's Matt Payne, our Purdue coach, talking about Indiana's defense, and it was without question obvious to anybody in the building yesterday. It was obvious to me early on. It was like, wow, look what they're doing. And the pressure that they were putting on was very obvious, and it worked. Like I said, forcing Zach Edey into turnovers. It really disrupted Purdue's offense, and it really disrupted their freshman guards. And Jalen Hood-Schifino, while not having a great first half with only 4 points, really kicked it in gear in the second half with 12 second half points, which doubled the output of Trey Kaufman, Wren, Fletcher Lawyer, Braden Smith, and Mr. First combined. They combined for 7 points. So they left it up to Zach Edey, and he could not get it done by himself. Trace Jackson Davis had the help to get that done, and they did. The guys, Indiana, they made the plays when they had to. And it was different people, whether it was Miller Kopp hitting those late threes, whether it was Trey Galloway going to the rim. It was impressive to watch that team yesterday grow from where games that I had seen them, big games they'd played in against Arizona. They just curled up in a ball, and that did not happen yesterday, but they have got to maintain that. They have got to carry that forward. But let's hear from Mike Woodson. And he talked about the defensive effort that, like I said, I had not seen this year that Indiana put forth and where that came from.
Well, again, guys, we've had some games this season. I point to the North Carolina game when we had a full deck. I mean, we were as good as any team in the country playing that game. And we've had our moments, and we've had our struggles, But at the end of the day, we answered the bell today. I thought our coaching staff did a great job in terms of prepping and getting guys in position to do what was asked of them, and we delivered what we needed to deliver, a win.
Yes, they did. They did exactly that. Delivered exactly what they needed to do. They before the game, not that I know anything, but I said that if they're going to win this game, it's not going to be the Trace and Zach Edey show. It's who's going to hit shots. And that's exactly what it came down to. Who hit shots, and Indiana hit them, and they kept Purdue from doing that. So you've got to give their defense the credit. And like I said, I was amazed at that effort. Nancy pointing out, is Geronimo playing? Well, he was. How much did he play? That's a good question. I can't remember.
Geronimo didn't play. He was the only 3 players that came off the bench were Malik Renew.
There you go. That's
Tamar
right.
Bates and Caleb Banks.
Yeah. A very, very short lineup Indiana went with. Jordan was dressed and went through warm-ups, pregame warm-ups. But yeah, he did not play a lick. Wow, that's the shortest rotation Indiana has gone with this year. Just 8 players. They got scoring from everyone except for. Oh, I'm at the half. I got to get back to the game. My fault. Daggone it. Still, they got scoring from every player that played, as did Purdue, which is kind of unique. every player that played in this game scored. Tamar Bates only with 3 points, but he put up 3 shots in 20 minutes. But these guys were contributing in other ways. Caleb Banks scores 4 points in just 7 minutes. But he was hustling his butt off. Love watching him get in there and play. Malik Renew, he put up 8 points, almost in double figures. Trey Galloway in double figures. Race Thompson, 6 points, 4 of 4 at the free throw line. Gigantic. Trace had 25 with 7 rebounds. Miller Kopp, 6 points, but both of those coming on 3-pointers, big 3-pointers. And Jalen Hitchafino, like I said, with 12 second half points, 8 of 15 shooting for the game, 4 assists. He was a big reason that kept Indiana going. And imagine they played without their best on-ball defender, Xavier Johnson. I mean, they would have just lit Purdue's guards up. So I'm curious what things would be like with a healthy Xavier Johnson in the return matchup. I don't know that he can be back by then, but we'll address that when it comes. But we got to take a quick break. You're listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by our good friends from Go Team, a part of the Endeavor Hospitality Wow Club. Make sure you go to the Wow Club, sign up, start earning Wow rewards today. Go Team is a great product for those on the go, whether it's you, the kids, your team. That quick, fresh, tasty snack, you can pick it up at BB's or GoTeamBites.com. Back with more Indiana Sports Speed Radio right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether
All right. So you can still have Trace and Jalen Hood-Schifino if you want to use those when we come back.
Absolutely. Because we can still use them. I mean, there's multiple things we can use them for throughout the week. Well, no, just tomorrow, actually.
Yeah, I guess that's true because I'll play again. And they'll probably have another availability today, won't they?
And actually, my question to him, I think he talks about Rutgers. No,
Trace?
they won't have an availability. They won't have an availability because they're traveling today.
They play at home again.
Oh, that's right. Travel this weekend.
Is this so this will be their only weekend road matchup, won't it?
Yep.
The Michigan Wolverines. Did you see where Fox accidentally put on one of their graphics the Michigan State Wolverines?
No.
They also made a mistake. They put the Big Ten standings up on the board and put UConn in there.
Let's see. What is today? No Big Ten games today. I think tomorrow, Indiana, Rutgers, Minnesota, Illinois, Maryland at Michigan State. Iowa is going to go to Purdue and get their asses handed to them on Thursday.
How much time we got? All right, back in a minute.
Texting picture that is has Derek Elston, Colin Hartman, and Todd Lindemann. Well, Jared Jeffries.
All right, here we go. 15 seconds.
specials, quick, attentive service. Southern Stone Restaurant provides delicious 5-star comfort food with a Southern charm at 2-star prices. Southern Stone Restaurant is part of Endeavor Hospitality's Wow Club.
This segment is brought to you by K-Bello. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Endeavor Hospitality Group and Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio, coming to you from high atop the 18th fairway here at the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios. Jim Coyle with you as always. John, the producer, finishing out. Good to be back on a Monday, especially when there are good things to talk about. Indiana 3-0 on the weekend over Purdue, by the way. A couple of people pointed out, Pete, and I saw someone else on the comments pointing out IU wrestling knocking off Purdue. As Angel Escobedo, he was on with us a week or so ago. The things he's done with that program, mind-boggling. John, did you see Will was on earlier? Will B?
Yeah, that's right. Good buddy Will Bauer. I did see his comments.
Yeah, he was.
If you're still on there, good to see you, Mr. Bauer.
Absolutely. I don't know if he's still running it, but one of the stations that we're on, WBRO, he basically has just created all their content. So, but now he's off to growing some other things. But congratulations, good to see you, buddy. Sumatory says Purdue avoids trips to Rutgers, Illinois, and Iowa this year, whereas IU avoided going to Nebraska, Ohio State, and Wisconsin. They would have loved, Indiana would have loved to have had those games, especially Wisconsin this year. They would have been able to erase that streak. That's tomorrow they play Rutgers and the Wisconsin were one of the last two negative streaks they have going, I believe, that they will have vanquished. Vanquished a couple of them last year with the Purdue streak. There was a Michigan streak. I'm trying to think. There was even maybe Illinois. I forget. But now you've got Rutgers, Trace Jackson Davis acknowledging having never beaten them. I think he alluded to that very thing when I asked him about the Purdue game the other night about the defense. Let's hear what he had to say.
It was huge. Just relying on my teammates, our game plan, just doubling the post, and they did an excellent job in the first half. And it really brought us out to that lead, and then we kind of carried it through the second half and rode it. Obviously, they hit back, but all around it was a great team effort. Yeah, being the team man, but it was a great effort by Trace Jackson Davis. I'm not just going to toot his horn, but he undoubtedly was the Pied Piper. He had to have help. They wouldn't have done it without the other guys, all of them. And I mean that was a team contribution right from Caleb Banks up. So enjoyed to see. Also in the post-game presser, I believe was Jalen Chifino.
That's right. Asked about his game-winning play down the stretch. Let's hear what he had to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I didn't know the play was, going to go like that. But when he called timeout, I told Coach, I was like, I'm going to get this last bucket. And obviously, as you see, that's what happened. So, I was happy with it.
Yep, I'm sure he was, as were about 17,400 other people, as you could see as they were storming the court. Fred asking if, where did I see that? Was I part of the crowd court storming? No, I was smart enough with about 2 minutes to go. I grabbed all my stuff and headed down from my media seat down into the tunnel and was ready to shoot some video, which I did. And I should have gotten that to John because it shows how dumb you are to do that, because the last John, you'll have to, I think I'll have to see if I post it. If I didn't, I'll post it tomorrow or later on. But the last thing you see is this one of the dumb students that are climbing over that railing that separates the bleachers and everything else.
Man.
And boy,
I was holding my camera, and I think he hooked his foot on my arm, maybe because I was making everything was just steady. I was holding everything tight because I knew what was going on behind me. And boy, he hit a leg, and he hits about 4 or 5 bleachers down.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm like, that's well. That's another reason why you don't do that. It's another reason. Not only forget about hurting him. What about the people that could have been in those bleachers? The kids. It's just, yeah. I don't know. We'll talk about that more later. Who knows? Are the schools in, or when you get in a situation like that where it's a great possibility, how much can the schools do? I know. We'll talk more about it tomorrow, but I know that IU was going to efforts in the hallways because I saw it. But great to have Don Fischer on today, and that he was celebrated over the weekend. Make sure you check that out. It's on Indiana Sports Beats YouTube channel. Great to have Dustin Dopirak on as always as well. Of course, John, the producer. Most importantly, great to have you guys. We're back tomorrow to do this again as Indiana prepares to take on Rutgers tomorrow night, as we'll prepare that for you. So, but until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.